I think that was a real moment in time for Australia, I think, in terms of awareness around neurodivergence and what it means. If you apply yourself and you're a hard worker, you can do anything you put your mind to. I'm Holly. I co-founded Wable, which is a first of its kind social networking app for the neurodivergent community. I reached out to Michael Theo, standout star from the Australian series of Love on the Spectrum. Google Play had accepted the app on Android, but Apple had denied us. I was doing it off the side of, a full-time day job for 2 years. It's like your social life, you can kiss that goodbye. You become very resilient to those things eventually, and things don't stress you out as much as they did before. When you're finding your tribe and the people that really resonate with the same goal that you want to achieve and are in it for the right reasons is really important. If you have a good enough idea, someone eventually is going to try and replicate it, and it reinforces your business model. The more people you speak to, the more you learn. It will continue to evolve. It's okay to actually make mistakes. It's okay to ask questions even if you think they're stupid.
Where big dreams meet bold action. Where we share real stories, actionable insights, and the inspiration needed to transform your ideas into businesses. Are you ready to turn your ideas into success and be an inspiration to others? Join Inspirepreneur.
I'm Holly. I co-founded Wable, which is a first of its kind social networking app for the neurodivergent community. Yeah, I came up with the idea for Wable all the way back in 2020, which feels like a long time ago now. During Melbourne lockdown, I can't remember which number it was, it might have been 5 or 6, but like so many of us, we were all glued to the couch watching Netflix, and it was the first time that the ABC series Love on the Spectrum hit Netflix, and I think that was a real moment in time for Australia, I think, in terms of awareness around neurodivergence and what it means, what are the challenges for autistic people when it comes to connecting, dating, making friends. And so, yeah, it was a time when I think we were all feeling disconnected from the world and each other, and people were turning to Zoom calls, and we were, using dating apps and all of the things that, are out there to connect us with one another. But it prompted me to look at what's out there to assist the neurodivergent community in creating meaningful connections, not just, allowing a platform to connect them, but allowing them to do it safely and to meet one another and find one another and combat loneliness that unfortunately does affect the neurodivergent community, more so. So that's where the idea kind of started, and I reached out to Michael Theo, who was the standout star from the Australian series of Love on the Spectrum, and said, if there was an app like Wable, the one that I've come up with, would you use it, and what would you want it to sort of look and feel like? And it really snowballed from there. It was an idea from my couch that's now 4 years later turned into a full business, which is really exciting and super meaningful, because now we have over 11,000 people that have downloaded the app, and we just launched in February of 2024 in Australia, launched in New Zealand in July, and about to launch in the US and the UK. So it's come a really long way in a short amount of time, but it's really meaningful now because there are real people on the app making friends, dating. I get to hear their stories, which is so amazing, and it definitely keeps me going. My background was totally different to starting Wable. Starting a business was never, I suppose, on the cards for me. It wasn't something that I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start a business. But I guess I always had a hardworking attitude, and I think I learnt that from my dad. So I grew up just with my dad, who's a single parent, raised my sister and I, and he was always a very, very hard worker, and I think I learnt at a young age the value of hard work. And you don't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room or the most popular or whatever that is, but if you apply yourself and you're a hard worker, you can do anything you put your mind to, which I know sounds super cliche, but I do believe that it's true. So I started, my background is marketing, and I worked in radio for a long time. So I worked in sports radio, so I love chatting everyone's ear off and talking away. And so I've always been confident, I've always been able to tell a story, and I've always been, everything I've done with passion and that I'm passionate about, or I just can't do it. I'm either 100% all in or 100% all out. I'm not someone that kind of, delves in between those things. So I worked in radio for a while. I used to do the night shifts, which nobody wanted to do because the graveyard shift, as you call it. But I suppose my goal was to be on breakfast radio, which eventually I got, and I had my own show. And just as I had, gotten it where I wanted to with radio, I came up with the idea for Wable. And Wable kept me awake at night. Like, I was never going to rest until I was able to get Wable off the ground and see if it would work or not. And thankfully it did. But it was really hard for the first couple of years building Wable before anyone knew about it. I was doing it off the side of, a full-time day job. I was working in marketing and comms. So, my day would start from 8 o'clock and finish at 5:36, and then I would go home, eat, and start again from 9 o'clock till 2 a.m. every night for 2 years. And I told no one. I told no one that I was doing it because I think I almost was like, gosh, if I don't complete this, I don't want people to know I've been working on this for 2 years and I've failed. Not that it would have been a fail anyway, but it was grueling to get it done. But now on the other side of it, being able to look back and see, it was all worth it, and I can look back and actually hear from people and what it means to them. So, new challenges pop up, but that was a really, really hard and challenging part. Yeah, well, in the first 2 years, I didn't have any investors in the first initial period. So first of all, the challenge is you're bootstrapping everything that you're doing. And, for me, I was literally Googling, how do I find investors? I've never started. This is where I've started from, really, I suppose, naive in a lot of ways going into it, but maybe that's a good thing because you take a lot of risks. But I had no idea where to begin. My background wasn't technology, and so it required a hell of a lot of research to actually work out how do I get from where to go and create an app. And I landed on the idea that, okay, if I'm going to approach investors, I need to have something to show for my ideas. I'd written ideas down on, my phone, on my laptop, on the back of a napkin, wherever I was, and how do I sort of bring all that together and have something to show for my ideas? So I got to work on the first prototype of the app. I got a team based out of India and the States to work together and build the first version of the app, which, self-funded and got going. But yeah, that meant I had to work on those time zones. So I'd work my day job, put as much money out of that as I could, still pay the bills, try to pay the bills, and get the first version of the app going. So yeah, it meant for 2 years, your social life, you can kiss that goodbye. You can kiss pretty much everything else goodbye, including sleep, for a couple of good years there. It was really hard. There were definitely moments where I thought, oh my God, what have I started? This is, crazy. But even I think a couple of my family members were like, oh God, I don't know if she's sort of bitten off more than she can chew here, but thank God I'm out the other side and we actually made it. And when we launched, it was just a big sigh of relief, to be honest. But yeah, not without its challenges. I think I remember I'd gotten the app, we'd launched the app, and we had a launch party planned in Sydney, and we were going to bring, a bunch of media and influencers and some great ambassadors in the neurodivergent community to all come together and celebrate that, we'd finally launched, and we had a venue set and this great party planned. And 3 days before, I was in emergency. I got sick and was in the emergency room. I still made it to launch, but it was just so everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. 2 days out from launch, I'd been asked to go on a current affair, and that was, to say the app's launched, let's get going. Google Play had accepted the app on Android, but Apple had denied us. And so we 2 days out from launch, had to appeal to Apple and say, let us put the app on the App Store. But it was, really down to the wire there. I thought I was going to go on a current affair and not have, an app launch on the Apple App Store, which would have been a disaster. But we made it, and Apple published our app about 6 hours before launch. Thank God. So, it's all full of twists and turns, but I think you become very resilient to those things eventually, and things don't stress you out as much as they did before. When you go through such high pressure situations all the time, I think I've learned to cope with them a lot better than I did then. We like to say so, yeah. Yeah, I think I've been, when it was just me and I was on my own and you don't have, like, I suppose, sounding boards all the time, or it's really hard to find people that understand the actual pressure of what you're dealing with in those moments, because it feels like it's everything. When it's your baby, if it goes wrong, like, it's me, like, and so much of, like, I place so much of even my self-worth on Wable and what happens with this, because I've put my heart and soul into this for years. So it feels personal, and I know people say you should be able to separate business from personal, but when it's yours, you can't. It's so hard not, to do that. And so I suppose in the beginning stages, that stress was definitely hard to deal with, but I was lucky enough that I found a great team and was able to surround myself with them, which was amazing. I brought on my co-founder, Louise, and our first two investors, Craig Mason and Jamie Green, and now joined the board. And so all of a sudden I was surrounded by, three people that shared the same goal as me, deeply connected to the neurodivergent community, who shared the same vision, and being able to have, bounce ideas off one another and share the load, I suppose, makes all the difference. Like, I'm as good as, what the team is. So that's made a significant difference, is finding your tribe and the people that really, resonate with the same goal that you want to achieve and are in it for the right reasons is really important, particularly, given that our app is to service and to better the lives of neurodivergent people. It was, integral that we have a team that shared, the importance of that I started with. Yeah, I think there are so many brilliant apps out there, and shout out, there are so many amazing female tech entrepreneurs, and that was really cool, because all of a sudden you can get down a rabbit hole of who are the women out there, what are they making, and for me, I knew Wable was going to be a social networking app, so of course you go and look at what's out there. What was different about each social networking app or dating app that came out? Because if you actually look at the business structure of a lot of, dating apps out there, they're not that different from each other, but they all had a different purpose. I mean, Tinder started, and then Bumble came along to put women in the driver's seat of connection, and then Hinge came along because the Hinge was more for serious relationships and designed to be deleted. They functioned the same way, but what made them different? And so for me, it was about, like, going and looking at what did these people do, how were they different, and what was happening in the world at that time. Why did people feel that they connected, with that app or that piece of technology? So each one is revolutionary in their own right, and of course they're competitors, and you have to have competitors, everyone does. But I think if in the beginning phases of, if you've got an idea, particularly for an app, is I spent a lot of time being worried about people copying my ideas, and I was like, I'm not going to talk about this with anyone because people are going to copy my ideas. And the reality is, if you have a good enough idea, someone eventually is going to try and replicate it, and it reinforces your business model, and you have to take it in your stride. It does piss you off, but that's kind of a good thing, because it puts a bit of fire in your belly, I suppose, after you launch. So I see it as a good thing. But I think, being able to get all your ideas on paper, and it sounds silly, but for me it was mapping it all out. I drew pictures, and I'm not an artist, but I drew pictures all the time. I spoke to people, to psychologists, to neurodivergent people in the community, to people in my life that are on the spectrum. I spoke to so many people. Like, it wasn't something that just, I drew a couple pictures and it happened overnight. I spoke to so many people to be able to bring this to life. Real experts in accessibility, experts like psychologists, and having all those people bring ideas, like, was amazing. If I didn't speak about my idea because I was afraid someone was going to steal it, my app wouldn't look the way that it does now. I mean, I think I had good ideas. I think I have good ideas all the time. Whether or not all of them are good is another question. But I mean, the more people you speak to, the more perspectives you get. That's power. Like, use that. Use people. People come up with brilliant ideas all the time. Use them. And so, yeah, we did things like created Wable so that you could change the theme, you could change the colour of the app for people with sensory sensitivities, which hadn't been done before, and things like that. So the more people you speak to, the more you learn. It will continue to evolve. But I think I would say take your time and make sure that the people building your tech, if you can't afford to, because a lot of people will outsource because it's cheaper, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have, a worse version of your app if you can't have an in-house developer. I think if you have a really brilliant outsourced team that you connect with and you trust, then you can absolutely make it work on a budget, which is important when you're a startup. Yeah. Yeah, I think you've got an idea, validate it first with, people in your life. Look at what's happening in the market. How big is this? How big is the potential? In terms of building an app, then the next step is to find a really great development partner. If you're stuck for ideas, hit me up because I've done my research. But you can do your research. Go and download all your favourite apps. Look who developed them in the beginning phases. If they're a startup, they more than likely have outsourced it in the beginning phases before they could afford to bring in their own developers. So you don't have to entirely reinvent the wheel. Like, reach out to people that have started great apps and ask them, what did you do and how did you get started? And that's what I did. I was really lucky that I connected with a brilliant founder of an app called Fitify, and which is a dating app for people on a fitness journey, and it went off in the UK. And I was really lucky to be connected with him in the early phases of when I was building the prototype. And so I didn't really have to reinvent the wheel, because I said, what did you do and how did you get started? And he's built, a multi-million-dollar company now. So I think if you are someone that's passionate and you're getting started, there are people out there with reputable big businesses that will help you. Like, ask for advice, because you get more often than not, you'll get it for free, and you might connect with that person and you might be able to, get a mentor out of them as you continue going. And it's funny, now it's sort of come full circle. I relied, heavily on his advice when I started, and now people will reach out to me and be like, oh, how did you get started? So it all comes full circle, and it's so nice now that, I got a lot of help. Can I help someone else get started now? Because it wasn't all that long ago I was in that position. So finding a really good development partner, being really clear on your idea and what your differences are, and it evolves from there. My biggest piece of advice is set a date for your launch and just launch, because if you have an app, you'll continue to pick it apart, and if you wait for your, first MVP to be perfect, you'll never launch. You just have to go, okay, that's it, I'm launching. And whether or not it has all the bells and whistles that you wanted it to, from day one is irrelevant, because the way I saw it was, okay, this is the date I'm launching. It's never going to be perfect, because if I waited till Wable was perfect to launch, I never would have launched, and that's not a good place to be. But anything after that, new things that you add or things that you change are stories to tell. If you add a feature, in a month's time and you don't launch with it, it's not the end of the world. It gives you something else to talk about, because you talk so heavily on launch. Then what do you talk about? Well, there's this thing coming, and keep your customers, involved and keep them guessing what's next. Listen to your community. What do they want? Launch it afterwards. It doesn't have to be on launch day. So that's my best piece of advice. Yeah, I was so excited because we worked on the first version of the app for so long. It took me a good couple of years, and then I was like, right, okay, I got an email, Google Play, accepted, your app is on, available for Android. I'm like, great, I have hundreds of people on the wait list waiting for Android. And so I was able to go back to all of those people that signed up, our beta testers, and say the full app is downloadable now, you can go and download it. And I'm watching the screens roll in. And when we went on a current affair, it was maybe an 8-minute segment, and we had 900 people download the app in 15 minutes, and we were like, oh my God, watching them roll in. But it was really scary in the lead up, because, like I said, you basically apply to the app stores to have your app published. And I thought, oh yeah, everyone just applies and your app gets published. No, that's not what happens at all. Google Play were like, tick, yep, straight away, all good. Apple came back and appealed to us and said there are too many apps in this category. Basically, we're not accepting your app. And they don't give you much more information than that. And then they leave you a link at the bottom to appeal the decision. And so I went in with my email, well, excuse me, because I've created the first social networking app for the neurodivergent community, and we're leveling the playing field for the neurodivergent community and connection. So how could you deny us? And blah, 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 blah. Wrote this big long email. Anyway, second time around, we got approved by Apple, thank God, and it went to the App Store, but it was down to the wire. Like I said, it was hours before official launch, and we had media lined up that I was going to say the app's downloadable on, Apple and Google Play. So yeah, if it hadn't gone through, I would have had to work out some way to explain why it wasn't available on the App Store. Yeah, I think having a marketing and comms background definitely helped. I mean, part of launching Wable as well is a big part of it is finding investors, because we're a startup and we could only bootstrap for so long, and then you need to get investors on board and keep building on what I'd created. So a big part of that is presenting and storytelling, being able to sell your idea and sell your team and sell what your vision is and where you're going. So I think coming from a marketing background, firstly, the creation of the app has its benefits, but afterwards, you know, being able to genuinely connect with people and tell a really good story and get initial brand awareness. And I think because I had a strong comms background as well, being able to piece together all the different parts of Wable that created this beautiful story was really important, because it allowed people to connect with us, and it allowed media to be interested in us, which, you know, allowed us to reach more and more people when we first launched. So that was, you know, a significant advantage, I think, when we launched. But, you know, I also couldn't have done it without the help of Michael from Love on the Spectrum, who tells his story so well, you know, who genuinely uses the app, who's made friendships on the app. And so, yeah, that story and how it come full circle, and having that background to be able to tell it in a, you know, in a compelling way and to get people interested is definitely, yeah, an advantage. It definitely helped. Our first milestone before we launched was we completed our first capital raise, or our seed round, and that was massive, because, you know, I look back now, it was seriously just me on the couch and thinking, oh, this is a cool idea. And then, you know, 4 years later, there's a whole bunch of shareholders behind us and a board, and it's a real business. So I think it was really validating to complete that seed round and go, okay, this isn't just, you know, an idea I had on my couch anymore. This is serious. People have put their money behind it. We raised about 300 grand to kick us off and to get to launch. And we started a board of 4 people. So that was a really significant milestone for us, and completing that round definitely validated the idea, validated the business model, but it also instilled a lot of confidence in me personally to be like, okay, no, this is real now. Like, people do really believe in this. It's not just, you know, I think I have brilliant ideas all day long, but not all of them are brilliant. But I'm like, this one's going to stick. Like, I really genuinely believe in it. And now I've got a team of people who believe in it too. So that was a really amazing milestone. And the second being getting to Australian launch. That was awesome. And we had such a big wait list of people that were waiting for it, because we started on social media, you know, promoting the app and getting beta testers before we launched. So that was really cool. I think it was definitely a real pinch me moment when we did a current affair in Today's Show, and that was just wild. Like, I never in my wildest dreams thought that we'd be doing something like that. And then in July of 2024, launching in New Zealand was super exciting as well. And it was a natural next step, you know, given there are neighbours over the ditch. So, and Australia and New Zealand are so close that, you know, naturally New Zealand heard about us and were waiting for us as well. So having being able to launch in New Zealand was massive. Next year is going to be huge. Early next year, early 2025, we're launching in the US and the UK. So that'll be our next milestone, which I'm super excited about. We're also capital raising again. So completing our second capital raise will be, you know, another great milestone when we achieve it as well. So yeah, it feels like sometimes you have so many milestones and achievements along the way, but because you're always just go, 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 I think I personally am not very good at like stopping and smelling the roses, as they say. And so it's actually when I sit down and have conversations like this that I go, oh wow, actually, like I've done a fair bit here. Like I actually have, because it kind of all feels like a blur. Sometimes you look back and you're like, wow, I fit all that into, you know, 6 months, like these 2 launches, capital raise, all that happened in the space of 6 months. But whereas, you know, creating the app just felt like such a long time. But looking back, I'm like, oh, no, this is good. I'm doing it. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, raising money is hard, and it has been in Australia in particular. You know, it's kind of turning around a little bit now towards the end of this year, but raising money is hard. It's even harder if you're a female. It's even harder if you're a female in tech. So, but you know, there is still deals out there to be found, and there are so many people in the world that, you know, if you knock on enough doors, there's going to be people that are interested in your idea and what you're doing, and they're going to believe in you, which is just the most important thing. I mean, I think people will look for ideas and have brilliant ideas all the time, but an investor, I think the investors that I have on board have connected with me personally and connected and believe in me, because it's all well and good to have a great idea, but if you don't have the team or the founders to execute it, then it's nothing and it will fall apart. It's definitely challenging being able to, if you're a startup founder, it's an art to be able to extend your runway as long as possible, use your funds wisely, sparingly if you have to, and and planning ahead is really important. You need to know when you need to plan your next raise to be able to keep momentum going, because you don't want to lose momentum, especially when you're launching. We went Australia, New Zealand, US and UK next, so and you're capital raising whilst planning multiple launches at once. So it's a lot to juggle, but if you plan ahead, I think one thing for me is like financials, money, maths was never my strong point in school, and I think what's great about being a founder is that you learn to do everything. You're like, okay, you have to do the stuff that you don't like. Like if a lot of, I think, CEOs are probably like, oh, leave the finances to the finance team, but it's like, no, you need to actually understand every corner of your business, because A, I think it makes you an amazing founder and it upskills you, but B, yes, one day if you do get a bigger team and you step out of that point, you have more respect for those departments and those team members, because you know exactly how hard it is to do all of those things at once. And so, I think we've found a really good balance of being able to allow ourselves a big runway so that we can achieve our second raise, keep our current shareholders happy. We've had shareholders from our first round recommit to the second, which is a very good sign, because it shows they're continuing to believe in us and what we're building. But it's really important to be selective about who's on the journey as well and who's on your cap table. Every person at the corner of Wable and connected with us is connected with it for the right reasons, and more often than not, has a personal connection to the community. And have given us help along the way. We've got lawyers and secretaries on the cap table that have helped us in the initial phases when we haven't had all the funds to splurge on a big legal team. So we've been so blessed in that department, and particularly our board members as well, and the amount of sweat equity they've put into Wable is huge. So the right people to get involved are those people that will get behind you, can lend some expertise, can give you advice as well, and push you along. I think it's certainly challenging. There are grants, available to help women in tech get started, and it would be great to see more of those to help females in tech, particularly in the startup landscape, to start, because I think the hardest part is to start. Once you start and you get a bit of momentum, it's good, but getting some funding behind you in the initial phases is the most challenging. And it's no secret that women in Australia receive less VC funding than males. That's the unfortunate position you're in. So if you're raising money, it's hard. It is harder if you're a female. That's fact. But you still can find people that resonate. You just have to work a bit harder, unfortunately. But that's okay. It's all right. And in saying that, though, I have my first two investors, two males, Jamie and Craig, who have a personal connection to the neurodivergent community, and who significantly backed me and wanted to put me in the driver's seat. And Holly is the CEO, co-founder. She can do this. We'll just be there to support her, and that's been amazing. That's not to say that you're not going to have some interesting situations and pitches. I pitched to a funny story, sidestepping, but I pitched to a male investor in Sydney, and I remember I walked into this big boardroom. It was kind of scary and intimidating. It was quite early on, and I'm still getting the pitch down pat, as you do, and changing your deck all the time, and all of that. But anyway, so I was going in, and I think I was on my first flight out from Melbourne to Sydney. I felt like so prepared. I got in there. He was 15 minutes late. I'm just sitting there waiting, shaking. I'm scared. I think I've had 3 coffees by this point, probably didn't help. But I think I got about 15 minutes into the pitch, and he was like, so how old are you? And at the time, I'm 26 now, but at the time I was like, oh, I'm 25. He's like, okay, interesting. And then he said, oh, have you thought about, you're 26, you've never done this before. Have you thought about taking a CEO course? And I'm like, thinking in my head, sorry, pardon the French, but when the fuck do I have time to do a CEO course? I'm already doing the damn thing. I've already launched an app. So I think, you take advice from people, but, pick and choose a little bit. Not, everyone thinks that their way is the right way. You need to come back to your team and ultimately your shareholders and their ideas, and you can block out the rest of the noise, I think, and just keep going. You'll get there. Okay, when I complete this, if I ever sell this app and it's a huge, great success, then maybe I'll have time to do a course, but I've already done it by then. And that's the thing, I think for me, because I've had such a great team, they've empowered me. It's okay to actually make mistakes. It's okay to ask questions, even if you think they're stupid. No question's stupid. And just because I'm young and a female doesn't mean that I can't do it or that I need to take a course. I mean, is that even a thing? I mean, maybe it is, but I just think, like, I'm already in the driver's seat and I'm across from someone. You might be, you know, an advisor, and I respect that. I respect that. But have you started? Have you started a business? Have you launched it? Like, have you got what it takes? Like, you know, sometimes it's okay to flip the script in your mind. I didn't say that out loud. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are lots of social networking apps out there, but there is a lack of social networking apps that really contribute and empower neurodivergent people to connect in a meaningful and a safe way and actually help them form a meaningful connection. And so it was really important for us to fill a significant gap in the market. And it's, you know, the neurodivergent community makes up to 20% of the global population. It's a lot of people and growing every year as we hear more awareness. And I think we can attribute that to shows like Love on the Spectrum and a lot of brilliant programs that are coming out now. And it's great that there's a real movement and a shift in conversation. And in Australia, we had the National Autism Strategy drafted this year. So there are a lot of things happening, you know, in the community. And so for us to come in and create Wable at this time, I think was really important and was being waited for. Like when we launched, I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh my God, we were waiting for somebody to do this. Like, how come this isn't, you know?" And so that was really, really empowering to keep going. But there are significant differences throughout the app. For example, you can change the theme of the app for those with sensory sensitivities. There's a psychologist in the app that gives tips on, you know, managing rejection to a first meetup to a first date and all of those things inside the app at the user's fingertips. So users can connect in a meaningful way. They can get help from a psychologist inside the app. You can also find a neuro-inclusive job on the app. So we work with organisations, neuro-inclusive workplaces, because we're solving two problems here. One, that we want neurodivergent people to be able to find and connect with each other and combat loneliness. And the second being that the neurodivergent population are significantly underrepresented in the workplace. And workplaces aren't doing enough in general to be neuro-inclusive. So how can we empower more businesses to do that as well? So we list neuro-inclusive workplaces and jobs inside the app, as well as venues. So, you know, if two users will meet on the app and they want to go on a date, we'll show them a venue in their area where they could go that might have low sound or low lighting and be a really nice experience that caters to their specific needs. So there are more than one, you know, there's more than one reasons to stay on the app. It's a real ecosystem and social network and community, which is so important. And you mentioned Milestones before. I don't know how I forgot this, but our first event that we did outside of the app, there was about 100 people that met at a neurodivergent bar in Fitzroy in Melbourne. And when we walked in the room, it was a dates or mates event, so it's kind of speed friending dating, which is really cool. Lots of people on the app there, but no one knew each other. And then by the end of the night, everyone was standing with somebody else, and it was so special and they were all showing each other their Wable profiles, and it was just so cool to see that, because yeah, I see the app, but then actually seeing these people connect in person and hearing their stories and being able to put on an event like that was amazing. So we'll do more of those. Well, at the moment, the biggest goal in my mind is to get launched into the US and the UK. We've had so many people try to download the app overseas, and I don't want to turn them away for too much longer, but it was really important for us to test the market, test the app here in Australia and New Zealand. We're not, you know, a solution looking for a problem. Like we've really looked at this and nutted it out now and tested it really well here, and we know what's working. We know, you know, other things that our users want now as well, so we'll be introducing new features before we launch overseas. But it was really, really important to test the market here in Australia, build a really good awareness here, continue to build on the app, perfect it, launch into the US and the UK, which is happening early next year. So that's the biggest milestone and goal for me at the moment. And there's a lot to be said about, you know, there's this notion as well that you know, big tech apps or social networking apps don't really go off here in Australia. And I mean, Melanie Perkins at Canva is a perfect example of why that's not true. So I can't wait to get to the US and see what happens. Such a big opportunity. You know, the US series of Love on the Spectrum followed on from the Australian series, and it's making waves. So we've come at a really, really cool time, and we have an amazing new ambassador that's coming on board as well, who's got millions of followers, is a bit of a secret at the moment, but when we launch in the US, we're going to make a real splash, so I'm really excited for that. We utilise AI. There are so many security layers with Wable. I mean, if you are a social networking app, you need to be secure and it needs to be a safe environment, but even more so for us, given that our community is a neurodivergent community. It's very important for us, more so than anyone, to keep our users safe. And so we utilise AI for security. So basically, we use AI verification technology to A, ensure that a user signing up is a real person, and B, that that person matches that of the individual in their profile pictures. So we can make sure A, you're a real person, you're not a bot, and B, that you're not trying to impersonate someone else, which rules out, foul play, which is really important, because we want our community to be authentic and safe. It's not, a community where you go on and half of the profiles are bots. They're real people and a real community and a real ecosystem. So utilising AI in that perspective is really cool, and it adds a significant layer of security that's really important to our team. But we will further enable AI as our app goes on with a new feature, and we haven't spoken about it so much yet, but it will just say that it will. At the moment, we have a question wheel inside the app which comes up with conversation starters and things like that, because a lot of anxiety is around, starting a conversation with a new person and to think of what to say next. So how we further utilise AI will assist the user in continuing a conversation, I'll say that. There's a sneak peek, yeah. We've had so many beautiful stories that have come from the app so far, which is it's amazing. And there's been multiple instances where I've gotten emails and just cried. It's so beautiful. I'll get emotional if I think about it for too long. But the first one, I remember I was having the worst day. It would have been a month post-launch. I was super stressed and probably run down and a bit tired. And I was having the worst day. I was on the couch. I had a million things to do. I think I had 3 to-do lists, and I was like, God, where do I start? And then I got this email, and it was from a mum of one of our users. And she reached out and said, I know you probably hear about lots of dating stories and love, but I wanted to let you know that there are more versions of success of your app than that. Because if you Google Wable, you'll hear love on the spectrum and dating and that element of it, which is really important and holds its place, but there are more relationships to come from Wable other than dating. And she told me about her son who lives in rural Victoria, and he's autistic and nonverbal, and he doesn't leave the house, and he does a lot of online gaming, which is super cool. Anyway, he had met 2 friends on Wable who he now games with every day, and who he now has an online friendship with, which to him is really important. To his mum is oh, that's great, he's found new friends that he can game with. And it struck a chord with me, because I hear from people that have gone on first dates. We've got a relationship, can't wait for a Wable wedding, fingers crossed that happens one day. I've heard of people making new friends, which is awesome, but that was just another version of success from the app that I thought, oh wow, I've been thinking of how many people have gone on dates and but I didn't think from that perspective. So actually hearing stories like that is so special. It just makes all of the hard work, all of the, really hard periods, all the late nights and tears and all the rest of it, all the more worth it, because you're I'm actually making a difference. And if it wasn't for this app, and if it wasn't for me and my team, he might not have had that friendship, or this person might not have had found this relationship. I had someone a few weeks ago say he was going on a first date and he'd never been on a date before. Unbelievable. How many people get to come to work and say that they've, been a part of that, which could be life-changing for someone. So I get goosebumps when I talk about it. But yeah, so I'm so grateful when people reach out and tell me what it means to them, because I read all of them and it keeps me going, for sure. Yeah. It was as if this mum knew I was having a terrible day, and she just is let me tell you that your app is making a difference, because I'm just sitting there oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, where am I going to start, so many challenges. But yeah, it's pretty surreal when you hear that, because I just see the app screen and I see people signing up, and then you're oh my god, it's a real community here. People are genuinely connecting, and we're genuinely making a difference. So with, to me, I'm tick, this is a success, you know. It's already achieving what I set out to do, which is unbelievable. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, so our revenue is still, we're generating revenue, not breaking records because it's still very much a startup, but our investors are very happy to know that we're generating revenue every month, and it's growing, it's trending in the right direction. So as far as our downloads as well, we've ticked over 11,000 now, which is awesome, ahead of our international launch, which is super exciting. But yeah, our revenue model, we work on subscriptions and then we'll have advertising as well. So yeah, we'll look forward to seeing that continue to grow as we get overseas. Well, that's the most important thing, because you have the app side of things and then you have your security and your data and your infrastructure side of things with the app. So we've got a team that work on our development, and then we have a team that work on our security alone, which is amazing, and they're local and just the most amazing team. So we really trust them. I think finding a partner that can help you with that, and you're doing all the security checks that you need to do, because, you know, of course, you need to keep users safe, but you need to keep data safe, and that's such a huge part, a big component and a big task that never stops, that you have to keep on top of all the time. So yeah, there's nothing we take more seriously than that with our app. So yeah, I think users can join with confidence and join the app and be a part of the app with confidence that they're safe on there. And also there's so many reporting mechanisms, security layers to keep data safe, as well as safe interactions on the app, which is super important as well. So, you know, we have community guidelines that have to be adhered to. We have, you know, the AI verification technology, one-time passcodes. I mean, I could go on, but yeah, users and of course parents and carers of our users as well, which are a big part of a lot of people's journey on the app too, can rest assured that it's a safe community to join and be a part of. Well, you definitely have to be so resilient to have a startup. It is like a different beast. I know everyone says, oh, it's such a roller coaster, but it's so true. You get the highest highs of amazing achievements and, you know, launch and all of these amazing things, and adding people to your team, and, you know, media outcomes and revenue and first customers and all these amazing things that happen. You're like, wow, you're just riding this wave of fun. But with that fun also comes like the pits and very, very low times and late nights and exhaustion and, you know, perceived failures along the way, where you feel like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? But you continue. I think you just keep going. It sounds like, I don't know if that's just a magical piece of advice. It doesn't sound very inspiring, but you just have to keep going. And just, I think the more challenges you experience, I think the more resilient I've certainly become, and things that might happen now don't rock me as much as they would have 12 months ago, because I think you just kind of roll with the punches a little bit. But I think that the best thing that I've done is surround myself with people who genuinely believe in me and what I'm doing, and that can push me along when I need a push as well, which is super important. I think being really honest and authentic with your team of like, hey, I'm really, like, I'm feeling this way, I need some help with this, like, or asking a question that you might think is stupid, but it's not. But surrounding yourself with people that genuinely really care about you and what you're doing is super important. And that doesn't even have to be your team as well. It's also your friends and your family and the people that, like, you know, without my family in some of the times, particularly in the beginning phases when it was, you know, just little me trying to get this started, was fundamental in my success for sure. And yeah, I always, there's a really good quote, I think it's actually Richard Branson's quote, but I think about it all the time of like having a startup or entrepreneurship is like jumping out of an aeroplane and building a parachute on the way down. But that's actually okay. You don't have to know everything. And that's why when I went into that pitch meeting and someone said, oh, you're 25 years old, have you done a CEO course? I thought, you know what? You can stick that, because it's not true. You don't have to have all this experience. You don't need to be older, or you don't, you know, you can be a young female and be successful. You know, if you keep going and you want it enough, nothing can stand in your way. And I think it's about having that belief in yourself and surrounding yourself with people that believe in you too. It sounds so simple, but I think that it's true. And, you know, I think there's real advantages of, you know, being young, and what have you got to lose? Be a risk taker as well. Like, I think that's been a bit of a driving force for me, because I'm like, well, what do I have to lose? I can throw the kitchen sink at this thing, and if If it flies, great. If it doesn't, well, I've gotten a great experience out of it. Luckily, it's been a success, right? Thank God, because I put a lot of money into it. But I just mean that, what have you got to lose? Like, just go for it. Why not? Otherwise, I'm the type of person, if I get an idea stuck in my head and I really want to do something enough, the suffering comes from not having done it and not having launched. Like, sitting in this period where I hadn't launched and I just wanted to get there was the hardest, because I was like, I just want to have done it and I can't let go of this idea until I see it through. Which is a blessing and a curse, because, you just can't rest until you do something. But it definitely was a driving force behind Wable. So yeah, you have to go for it. And there's times like, and like I said before, things like getting things done, and not everything has to be perfect. There's definitely been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed with this, or I'm embarrassed with this version, or I put out this feature and it's not exactly what I wanted it to be. And people will judge you, but you just have to block it out, just allow it to be noise and just keep going. And the thing is, like, half the people that will have something to say like that will never even dream of starting something like, or working as hard as you have. So you just kind of have to block it out and just keep going. Can you use that to your advantage? Is that a good thing as well? Because it allows you to be so resilient, and with that resilience comes success, I think. And so I think, although it's really hard, if you just stick to it, keep going, you will eventually get there. It's the people that just keep going that make it. I don't think there's a secret recipe, or that you need to come from a certain background or come from success or money or whatever. I think it's the people that just have that dogged attitude and will just be like, whatever happens, I'm going to keep going. They're the ones that make it. I don't think it means that I'm, the smartest person in the room, because I'm certainly not. But I'm very resilient, and that's definitely what's kept me going through hard times, and would allow females, males, anyone to be successful, the people that keep going in silence as well a lot of the time. I worked on this for 2 years before I really told anyone about it. So they say, work hard in silence and let success make the noise, and that's the best thing you can do, I think. So I recently read Finding and Losing My Virginity, Richard Branson, which was very, very good. And it's an audio book as well, which I love. So I read and obsessed with anything Richard Branson. He's also neurodivergent, he's dyslexic, and he's just such a big thinker, and everything he did was just so interesting, and his life is so interesting. So if you're looking for a good recommendation, that's the one. It's very good. Absolutely. Well, I think for us, we're really focusing, and the whole app is created to and catered for the neurodivergent community. And although we say is niche, it's 20% of the global population. It's a lot of people. And so really being clear and defining what that means, what the challenges are and how we can address them is important. And I think I mentioned before, Tinder was the first, sort of dating app that really made a splash. Then Bumble was no different in really how it operates, but that it put females in the driver's seat. And then Hinge being, the app designed to be deleted for meaningful connections, more meaningful than hookup culture, sort of Tinder. So each one of them maybe operated similarly, but had a different story and a different aspect. And Wable's different in so many ways, but really that we're the social networking app for the neurodivergent community, and that's what we're trying to do, and being really clear on that. But also filling gaps in accessibility that you don't find on Bumble or Tinder or Hinge or social networking apps that are out there. So, allowing users the ability to change colours might sound like something that's not that important, but it is for a lot of people. Having that accessibility feature is massive. Having a psychologist at the user's fingertips, so that, okay, well, I've matched with someone, but I might not have used an app before, or I have heightened anxiety around a connection. Where do I start now that I have a match? Or you can literally go to a video at the user's fingertips and find out that information from a psychologist that works with the neurodivergent community. Not just any psychologist, a psychologist that specialises and works within the neurodivergent community, because that's important as well. But then also, there's more reasons than one to stay on the app. Yeah, you might meet someone, but you might find a job that will change your life. You might meet someone that will change your life. Or you might find a venue in your area that you go to that becomes a real community for you, or you might meet someone there. So there are more than one reasons to stay on the app, which is really important for a life cycle of someone on an app, because the most important thing, aside from what we're trying to achieve. But if you have an app, you want to get a user quickly and you want the user to stay on for a long time. So how can you service your customers and keep them around for a lifetime? So we believe our lifetime value to be long because we serve more than one purpose. If you meet someone, you don't just log off because it's a community built for you, and this is, you belong here. It's for you. Yeah.